Hello, guys and gals, me, Mudahar, and ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk a little bit about Xbox. I don't know what's going on. I think they're losing their minds a little bit. So this might be the one generation, I think, of gaming where things just keep getting more expensive. And, I'm one of those people where I do really enjoy playing video games. I fire up the Steam Deck every so often, and I fire up games all the time. Games like Sleeping Dogs, for instance, I'm playing on it recently. Playing some Dave the Diver. I was playing the Yakuza games all over again. I just bought my games, played them on the deck, so on and so forth. What if I told you, for the price of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate for the year, you could probably unsubscribe and save up enough money to buy one of these Steam Decks, not the OLED, you could get the LCD one, for roughly that price? You might be like, whoa, that doesn't make any sense. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the new Xbox Game Pass prices. Now it kind of looks like you're going to the gas station and filling up gas in your car. You've got the flex fuel, which is barely even fuel. You've got regular gas, and then you've got, oh boy, I just bought myself a German car, and I gotta spend big bucks to fill that bitch up. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I want to just go over some of the stuff for you. Let's rip the Band-Aid off. For $10 a month, ladies and gentlemen, you can get 50 plus games and unlimited cloud gaming, online console multiplayer. I love how we have just Skinner box conditioned gamers who play on consoles, whether it be the Switch, PlayStation, or the Xbox. Paying for multiplayer is totally okay, dog. I wish it was like PC gaming. I wish we didn't have to pay monthly subscription fees to access or just have the ability to connect with people on the internet, okay? That's literally insane. It's kind of wild to think that a lot of the most popular games are crossplay. So if you're a PlayStation player or an Xbox or a Switch player, you're always playing with PC players that never have to pay that extra subscription fee. It's wild how you've been conditioned, okay? Imagine a player base. You just cannot get them to pay a subscription fee because they know it's stupid. But you can force consoles. Now, basically what's gone on over here is Xbox used to have something known as Xbox Ultimate, which the price on it is actually hiked up by 50%. So basically, for anybody that doesn't know, Xbox is apparently this profitable venture. In September 30th, 2025, this was talked about, reaching record high revenue of $5 billion during their previous fiscal years. And this is, of course, obviously the president of Xbox going, yeah, no, it's sustainable. It is. It has to be. It absolutely is. And of course, that sustainability translates to just higher values for us to pay. So the premium is 200 games for 15 bucks a month, which now includes new Xbox published games within a year of launch. So here's the thing that I want to talk about, okay? Obviously, Xbox Game Pass, I think, was a pretty good deal before this price hike because for Xbox, you could get Game Pass and you could have access to all of the day one games out of the box. So let's say you wanted to play Call of Duty with your friends. Instead of paying, like, what is it, 70 bucks for each Call of Duty release, you could pay 20 bucks a month just to get access for the release month and play with your friends on the weekend, and then cancel your subscription later, okay? That was actually the smart, economical way to play COD. I would do that just to play the single-player game, like the single-player portion of Call of Duty, a bit of zombies, and once I had my, fill, once I busted the nut, I would just, leave and cancel the sub or put it on hold. But what's interesting about this play day one stuff is obviously if you go to their website, you can see that Ultimate and PC subscribers, yeah, they get access to all these things day one, and new published games from Xbox will apparently join premium within 12 months of launch. So 1 to 12, all right, depending on how Xbox wants to deal with it. But then they have this little interesting asterisk, and you go to the asterisks, it then says excludes Call of Duty titles. So I don't necessarily know if this means that Call of Duty stuff is going to be on Game Pass, which was one of the biggest boons about Game Pass, by the way. Honestly, one of the only reasons I would have stuck with it, just to play the single-player portion of these games. And I kind of suspect that Call of Duty probably is losing some of its luster, given the fact that it was, at one point, I think, pretty much the most selling game every year, or one of the most selling games. It's just it's like the Madden of shooters. But the thing is, for gamers on Xbox or just PC or whatever, it's just pay for the subscription. Why buy the game for 60 bucks? And I'm pretty sure that hit the brand a little bit, and maybe that's why they're removing it. Again, just speculation on my end, but I found it really interesting that the only titles they wanted to exclude from this
was arguably the biggest reason you would get it, or at least most people would.
But what do you get with the Ultimate, which is now $30 a month, okay? So we have reached Xbox 360, quite literally, okay? The 360 is back, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the reason why I talked about the Steam Deck was if you just look at the Canadian prices, and again, change this for America, right now, the cheapest Steam Deck is 20% off. So instead of paying for Xbox Game Pass, you could just get yourself an entire game console that is substantially cheaper than all the other handheld PCs and buy a bunch of indie games that you can put way more hours into. You know, you could play your games like Expedition 33 on this. You could play your Yakuzas. You could play your Final Fantasies. You could play your Factorios. Actually, I would not recommend that on this. You really do need a PC when you get to like even halfway into that game, okay? It will be a cumbersome experience. You get 75 day one games a year, including all Xbox published games day one. So I think Microsoft's kind of realized that, you know, giving away the game giving away the access to the entire game is probably going to harm your sales a bit. So they've kind of hiked up the price a little bit, maybe to incentivize people to get the regular bundle. But then again, the big benefit of Game Pass was always you get to play the Xbox games day one. If you're just going to hike that up to $30 a month, then, you know, instead of paying $360 a year, I might as well look at the Xbox games that appeal to me. And there are some, like, especially if it's a single player game, I'll just buy those separately on Steam, maybe GOG if they're available there, and just fucking actually own my games as opposed to going to the Netflix of gaming and just basically renting them. So the extra benefit they give you is Ubisoft Plus Classics. So obviously not the newest Ubisoft games you can imagine. And EA Play is included. So you basically get the satanic brothers together. Like, unless there's something in the Ubisoft repertoire you really enjoy playing, you probably already own it. And if there's something in the EA catalog you enjoy, you probably already own it at this point. But for $30 a month, you get Fortnite Crew. And this is when I realized that Fortnite, yes, Fortnite has a monthly subscription that now gives you access to a battle pass, an OG pass, a Lego pass, and a music pass. And even the rocket pass. Bro, how many passes can a fucking game have? I'm not going to roast Fortnite too much because ultimately I think it's probably the finest everything kind of game, you know? But damn, they're really just bundling it with all the battle passes for people. So I guess if Fortnite and all this stuff is important to you, great. But of course, play and earn up to $100 a year in the store with rewards. I want to remind you, the Microsoft reward system is basically a system that has you doing the most mundane, repetitive shit. So obviously, look, Xbox Game Pass, it was already something that I unsubscribed to because personally, I didn't play many games on the Game Pass anyways, and whatever I was interested in, usually I would wait like a few months down the road for a Steam sale or a GOG sale, you know, or you had all of the DLC now bundled with a big purchase, so then you could get the game later and actually, you know, own the game. You know, it's crazy to think that, ladies and gentlemen, like, you know, subscription services are kind of the norm, but back in the day, I literally would just buy a game like Gears of War 3. I still remember going to the midnight release for this and having a fully completed game on release. No betas, no like, hey, the campaign's coming a month later. Here's a bit of the multiplayer. Here's a little bit of the horde mode. You'll get beast mode a year later. No, it just all came day one out of the box. Okay, what a novel concept. That's pretty much what I feel is coming out of Microsoft, okay? It really is pure fucking insanity at this point. And I don't really know what they're going on with because it's not just Game Pass. Obviously, the price for the consoles have increased too. Like the Xbox Series S's have went from $379 to $399, which isn't a crazy hike there. But when you look at things like an Xbox Series X, going from $599 to $649, and in some cases, $729 to fully $800 is insane, okay? People already have a hard time affording a video game and a video game console. And you know, looking at this being the generation where, at least for game consoles, it has substantially just gotten more expensive as the generation has gone on. And by the way, let's be completely honest, this generation of gaming, whether you're a PlayStation gamer, an Xbox gamer, a Switch gamer, I don't think it's really necessarily all that crazy. At this point, I personally feel that if there was ever any reason to not own a PC, it's gone now, okay? You might as well just build a PC at this point, install Linux, save yourself the $100 Microsoft OEM license if you're still willing to pay for that, and just start purchasing your games on sites like GOG, for instance, where games like Expedition 33 can be bought for 58 Canadian. And this is a game that you own without any form of DRM preventing you, unlike the consoles, unlike even Steam. You know, even going onto these platforms and just going down into their mods list, you know, having access to things like Stalker Anomaly, which might as well be its own $60 game. This mod is this good. Having access to things like SWAT Elite Force, Give Me Deus Ex, Diablo Beelzebub, you might as well just start spending your money on a lot of these different platforms instead of just Xbox or PlayStation or Switch, and actually start owning your games, okay? It's crazy when you look at some of these games, like, you can't even deny me, John Woo's Stranglehold is probably one of the best little shooters you could enjoy for the weekend, and the fact that it's available for $2.79 to own is actually a fucking insane steal. And of course, obviously, for, again, Microsoft, they've got another thing coming by, which is the Xbox Ally X, the Rogue Xbox Ally X. And what's insane, too, is, like, it seems like a pretty decent handheld, and then you look at the price, and it's like $1,300. Now, $1,300 ain't necessarily all that bad, I guess, if you're somebody with just a burning hole in your fucking pocket, and you're somebody that's like, I really need to play the most top-of-the-line Unreal Engine 5 game available on my device. If you're not that kind of a person, and I assume most people aren't that kind of person, okay? You know, picking up the Steam Deck for literally a fraction of that price and actually spending the $360 you would have that year on maybe even an indie game a month, I'm pretty sure you can have more hours spent having fun times gaming than just renting video games online for the sake of it, especially considering the fact that now the medium package that they're offering doesn't even have Xbox games available day one, which, might I remind you, was the only real reason that I subscribed to this service to begin with. If now every Xbox game is not, like the new Forza Horizon game, if that's not going to launch on the regular Game Pass, if I have to pay the $30 version, at that point, I might just consider purchasing it on Steam, so at least I can play it on things like the Steam Deck, or at least own a copy of it down the road. Because especially with things like racing games, you never know when, like, licensing just pulls the cord. It's one of the reasons why for every Forza game, as much as I reasonably can, I always have them physically, because I know down the road things just completely get delisted, especially with racing games that have that much licensed content inside them. Now, I don't want to just make this video because I want to shit entirely on Xbox. I just don't understand what Xbox is doing. I think raising your prices up and pissing off the gamer this way is just never really a good thing. But the kind of model that Xbox is doing is really not so different from like all these other big tech companies. Look, PlayStation has its own subscription service that I'm also not a huge fan of. I think the value provided there really isn't that good. It's probably, in my opinion, less than you get with Xbox Game Pass. You know, I think like maybe arguably the Nintendo Switch one might be good because the older classic Nintendo library, like the Virtual Console, is pretty cool. And then you remember very quickly that, you know, the Steam Deck exists, cell phones, Android phones exist where you can install emulators to and not have to pay those, you know, subscription fees in general. This, and at least in that case, you can at least own your fucking game too. These are all scenarios where, again, I feel like subscription mania is just insane these days. It's not just gaming. It's gotten to the point where, like, you know, I don't have like Netflix. I don't have like the Disney Plus. I had Disney Plus just for a little bit because I wanted to watch like the Star Wars movies. And then I remembered, oh my God, the oceans exist. And then, of course, obviously, you've got other situations too, like, you know, at least in Canada, you got Crave. You've got a subscription service for basically anything at this point. And gaming is not far away from that, you know? Xbox has its service, PlayStation, Nintendo. I mean, we've just seen Fortnite has its own for its Battle Pass, like, amalgamation, Ubisoft, EA. It's getting to the point where everyone is getting subscription fatigue. And I'm not joking, when you really look into your finances, if you are somebody that is a subscription enjoyer, you probably don't really realize it, but it is a death by 1,000 cut situation. Like, really, I'm seriously telling you, audit your actual subscriptions and see how much really leaves your account every month when these things start getting charged, okay? There's a good chance, you have subscriptions that you probably don't care about, but you're just too lazy to get rid of. And I really feel like for these business models like Xbox, that's the business they were going for. Get people to sign up for the $20 package or $30 a month and hope to God that they're just too lazy to go through, the websites and the dark pattern ridden shit that we have to cancel services, right? That's really what I think is going down here. Look, ultimately the end, it's your money. You spend it the way you want to. I'm sure for some people who primarily only have an Xbox will enjoy the Game Pass, even if it's $30 a month, because this also includes the indie games that they enjoy playing. And if the Xbox is literally all you have, then this might still be the cheapest way to get access to your games. But with the way these prices are going up, I can't imagine a year from now, these prices won't jump up to $35 a month. And look, at that point, you might as well stop being the frog that's boiled in water. You might as well consider maybe switching to PC, maybe building a cheaper budget PC rig, and then trying your hand at Steam or the various other PC storefronts that exist, and taking advantage of the mass amount of sales that the PC community gets. So you can play those indie games and actually probably save money in the long term because you're not paying subscriptions to play online or rent games at an exorbitant value. You actually have access to real, true freedom. That's really where I get into. Again, the way that this generation is going, I don't even think I'll probably get the next generation of systems, especially if they take away, the whole notion of physical media, which is something that is very near and dear to me. I think at this point, if I'm going to continue gaming down the road, it's probably going to be exclusively just on PC. I also think it's interesting too, going into the future with all these AAA companies out there, I feel like my interest in AAA has diminished so rapidly, especially in the last 12 months that aside from games like Grand Theft Auto 6 and Resident Evil Requiem, obviously, I really don't have any other AAA game on my radar. So the whole notion of spending that $60 or $70 on a AAA game doesn't even, shock me all that much. It doesn't bother me because I know that realistically, I'm spending less on the AAA stuff. And so, for companies like Microsoft that are slowly raising these prices, ultimately, I think they have to also realize they're competing with like Rockstar Games, like actual really good AAA stuff. And that is ultimately going to nip them in the ass down the road. But who knows, man? I mean, this is just me saying it, okay? This is just my analysis of the situation. I'm sure that, down the road, the backlash will probably not be there. It's probably all just the internet anyways. People will still be paying these insane subscription prices. And, a while from now, it might be $40 a month next year. It might be even more. Who knows? But ultimately, I think Game Pass is just one of those things which started off pretty cool. But even I knew back then it was unsustainable because releasing your games day one and selling them for $60 was never a smart business option. And I think for companies like Microsoft that have already spent so much money in other things like AI, I really feel like this is Microsoft as a company coming down to Xbox and saying, listen, it's time to start making money, okay? All right, like the fucking pimp has come down and they're slapping their bottom bitch and they're telling them, you better start hustling. Otherwise, there might be some cuts that are willing to be made. I don't know. But anyways, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. I am out.